Welcome, everybody, to Space Force. I'm your host, Jason Tondro.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Aid Smith. Hello.
And
I'm also wearing a hat, by the way. You just can't see me.
Yeah, Jim is seizing the opportunity to dress in pure and 100% Carl style.
Yeah,
Carl has got to be the most one of the many interesting things in this very interesting episode. We're here for Terra Firma Part 1, the first of a two-part unexpected for me, mirror universe plotline, return to the mirror universe. And spotlight.
Did we?
Well, did we or did we not? Right, exactly. We will debate that. But before we get into this episode, which I think is really interesting, there's a lot here to dig into. Before we get into it, we have a little bit of a Star Trek news. Jim?
Last night, the wife of Dave Gallanteal, who's a Star Trek novelist, most recently he wrote the Stamets novel for Star Trek Discovery's line. He passed away of cancer.
Wow.
So I thought we should at least acknowledge his presence. I've read a couple of his books. Actually, the funny story was, I was thinking about this. I received his books, his first two duologies, Maximum Warp for the Next Generation line, as a graduation present.
Yeah.
My parents couldn't afford much, so they bought me Star Trek novels.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So those two books, they had a special spot in my life, and I'm a little saddened to hear that he passed.
He clearly has been part of the Star Trek universe for a long time.
Yeah, since 2001, I think that's when his. Let's see, I think he may have had a novel before those, but that was what I remembered him for, was those. And then he did his first solo novel was Troublesome Minds, which had a gorgeous Spock cover on it. It's like Spock in meditation pose.
Yeah.
And that's sort of emblazoned in my memory too.
We also have some interesting news, very exciting news for Star Trek Adventures. Aid?
Yes, so we have on the last mail they put out, Modifius themselves. This is not insider stuff. This is frequently you people will know this, but the exciting news is apparently they have expanded their partnership to include Discovery and Picard products in their line. So, which is pretty damn interesting. So we shall see what that entails.
I'm very interested to hear how they choose to capitalize on that, right? Like, are we going to get another rule book like the Klingon one that's out this week, where it's got all of the rules for the game, as well as setting information and unique stuff, kind of along the lines of what Fantasy Flight did with the Star Wars line, where there were like 4 different rule books for that game that were 2/3 the same, but 1/3 unique, and 1/3 was just enough to make me have to buy all of them, right? Or is it going to be more like the other source books Modifius has put out for like the Alpha Quadrant and the Beta Quadrant, for example, where it's just a source book and you can use the rules to play, a separate rule book to play. So everything in the book is new.
So the cool thing being more than anything else is as well is for if it takes a while to get those books in development.
Yeah.
The idea now that stuff that happens in Discovery and Picard cannot be mentioned in Adventures or anything else that come out as PDFs is fantastic. So I'm assuming crews will be the actual crews of the ships will be some of the first things they do. But the idea that someone's now there got that monk storyline there ready for a next generation encounter with them and in that time period or whatever, and that's going to be a thing. I think even just background material about Romulans and Romulus and all that kind of stuff we've touched on. All this happened X amount of years ago. Now they can actually acknowledge that and they haven't got to steer their ship around it all. So that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of... Yep.
Well, I think, just thinking of this, like globally speaking, like if I had my druthers and I was made idle, the Discovery book would need new rules because you'd have to factor in the spool drive.
Oh, yeah.
You have to gamify the spool drive, which is... So much of Star Trek is the get from point A to point B, and now you've removed that in your game.
But do you also reprint all the rules for character creation and task resolution?
I think with Discovery you would, but with Picard you'd make it a continuation like their Quadrant book.
What I'm hoping for is an Aliens of the Galaxy book, and now we've got these two series that at least is a starting point. Now we can start introducing all these characters we've seen in Discovery and in Picard, and use those alien races in there and say, well, they've been around since day one. You just didn't see them yet.
So now when you do the Aliens book, you can have Kelpians in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I want to write those guys.
Yeah.
I would also like one day. I hope that they can get the license to do Lower Decks as a kid-friendly game.
Yes.
As a stripped down rules version, kind of like this is your pick up and play.
Yeah.
You know, we've got 7 kids who want to play Star Trek. Here you go.
Don't do it with Lower Decks. Do it with the new show that hasn't come out yet.
Oh, right, Prodigy.
Yeah. Do it with Prodigy because Lower Decks is not really kid friendly in a lot of ways.
That's true. That's true. I was thinking like animated cartoon artwork.
But a Lower Decks board game.
That'd be fun.
Like some kind of like Munchkin Lower Decks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just as long as we all get to play sax.
All right, so Terra Firma. Georgiou is dying. She's going through this. We get the whole exposition scene that we talked about last week because we had a clip of it early, where she's dying because she's not only traveled 1,000 years through time, she's also traveled from one dimension to another. And we get our first clear reference. Jim exposed another reference in the Prisoner Code from last week. A first clear reference to the Kelvin universe. And we learned that we established that the Kelvin universe is part of the continuum, the multiverse of Star Trek. Anyway, the starship, the Discovery's AI, the starship's computer, comes up with a possible solution. They travel to a distant planet. Georgiou and Burnham beam down there, and they meet Carl, this enigmatic figure reading a newspaper from the future and sipping tea and wearing a bowler hat and sitting in front of a doorway. And Georgiou eventually goes through this doorway and ends up in the mirror universe, apparently, reliving her own life, specifically the choice to kill Burnham for treason. And at the end of the episode, she does not kill Burnham. She changes her life path and Burnham's life path by sparing her life. Meanwhile, in the real universe, quote unquote real universe, is it Prime? Is that the word that we use for the
Yeah, we're using Prime.
In the Prime universe, we find the trapped Federation ship, and all of our predictions are wrong. What's interesting about it is that it's crewed by Kelpians, and Saru is fascinated by this, but we don't really figure out what's going on it yet. This is really a Georgiou episode. But last week I said Book was the only character other than Burnham that gets their own episode. Well, now I'm wrong, and now we have Georgiou. She also gets an episode or two. Yeah, 2. So the main plot, the Burn plot, is kind of mostly just kicked down the road. Well, so what did you guys think? Abe, do you want to start us off?
Okay, so I am incredibly happy with this episode. Again, I like, number one, that it is a Georgiou episode. Yeah. And even though Burnham is kind of like a key part to it, not every scene was with her and Burnham. It was like, this is Georgiou's time to shine. This is the actual idea. It focuses on her. They got to the planet itself very, very quickly. Yeah. They got to the mirror universe very quickly, and then it progressed. I'm also very, very glad that B's plot of the Burn was literally that just one scene. So I think if we were dashing back and forward all the while, that would drive me insane. So this is giving this time to breathe. There's stuff going on. We're likely to obviously return to that once we'll see what happens in the next episode. But at least we've we see a lot more Mirror Universe stuff, which I always love Mirror Universe stuff. So there's a lot more Mirror Universe stuff, which is fantastic. There's some interesting stuff happening, and all in all, pretty damn happy.
Jim?
So I've been almost ruining Sundays or Saturdays when we record the podcast because, I don't want to be the guy who is negative on Star Trek. That's not at all the space I want to be in. But this week I found myself excited to come here and to talk Star Trek. Not to nitpick or like I'll do the nitpick. Don't worry, guys. Not really cold. There was a couple points where I was like, well, my wife called the show on this shit. But for the most part, I was very happy with this episode because it stopped being this mystery action adventure show and just became a character piece.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
I was really struck. Maybe it was just me, but the writing just overall seemed very tight. Like there was more interesting shit before the opening credits in this episode than I've had for the last several episodes of this show. It was just better. It was just better written, and we'll get to some other stuff later on. But I almost felt like there were moments where Georgiou was critiquing Star Trek Discovery as a show. Like when you told me, Jim, that this show was written by the people who are show running the Georgiou spinoff, I couldn't help but feel like maybe they were taking a couple of pot shots on their way out. I don't know.
The cool thing about that is if this is the people who are going to be running it, it looks like it's in pretty damn good hands. The idea that if the episode of Georgiou was like, okay, this is what this show's going to be like, and it's like, oh my god, that was the worst thing we've ever seen, then it's like that writes that series off straight away. I'm very, very happy with this so far.
Yeah, I was very skeptical of a Georgiou show from the minute I first heard about it because I don't like her character. I love Michelle Yeoh. Like she's a legend. Right? Like I would watch her in anything. But the idea of like a, Section 31 show or all the different theories that were being thrown around just kind of left me cold, But if the writing is like this, and if Carl comes back, I'm in. I'm in for Carl. All right. So let's start off with some of the big stuff, right? What the hell do we think is going on? Like Georgiou walks through this door and she's suddenly back in the mirror universe. Okay, what is happening? Who is Carl? What is Carl? Does anybody know what the hell is happening on the show?
No, and for once, there's a mystery plot that it can be any number of answers.
Yes.
Like it could be like I said, this could be like a Joseph Sladdle situation. For those How to Get Made fans out there. If this could be like Georgiou is having a moment where she is allowed to revisit her life and reanalyze her choices. And maybe if she makes new choices, it will free her from the genetic pool of the mirror universe.
Yeah.
Which is what I think they're going with because Stamets is dead.
Yeah.
Mirror Stamets is dead.
Yeah.
And Meryl Stamets was very much alive in season 1.
Right.
Like you don't get Loka into, back into the male universe without Stamets' help. The other thing is Owo has a Sulu skull. Owo in the episode that she appears in does not have a Sulu skull. So things are happening around her. Like Georgiou makes decisions and things are happening and the universe is adapting. But I don't think you can negate anything that we see in season 1 because that's too much of a retcon.
Yeah.
So I think we have a situation where she may make her choices, and what we're going to get is like a synthesized Georgiou. Maybe it's not Prime, maybe it's not Mill, but maybe it's some combination of the two out of this episode. Or maybe she went back in time and they're just like, fuck it. The male universe doesn't count anyways. We can do whatever we want.
Well, there is a long tradition established by DS9.
Oh, yeah.
Of killing main cast members in the mirror universe, right? So by the time DS9 ended, they didn't have any main cast members left in the mirror universe. They killed all of them, I think.
There's nothing to say that the mirror universe that she's traveled to is real, as in It could just be like a simulation as such.
Right.
You just get a chance to relearn the stuff. The interesting I find more than anything else is Carl himself.
Yes.
Now, my immediate thought, it's a Q. That was exactly what I thought. As soon as he turned up, and I thought he was going to not say what his name was, and if he did say his name, it would be something beginning with Q. Then he came Carl. It's like, well, okay, you little bugger.
Yeah,
that's not a Q word.
I was expecting Quincy.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So it's like, but that little section there is so classic original series Trek. It's like that is like, we just tell them with the planet, there's a man sitting there with a door, and you go, what the hell? But it worked. It's because it reflects classic Trek, and I like that it reflects classic Trek. Yeah. So
it was absurd and but also kind of deadpan at the same time.
It wasn't jokey. Like, it wasn't winking at the audience. Like, it presented an interesting visual that we weren't expecting as an audience.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Like, I'm not expecting a heavy set like City Gent sitting in the middle of this giant, they call it empty, but there was still trees in the background.
Yeah.
This empty sort of tundra. So it gave us an interesting visual, and I'm a sucker for an interesting visual.
Yeah.
And it gives us this character that has a lot of interesting, like, the newspaper he's reading is the newspaper. Like, so one of the theories is that he's an embodiment of the Guardian of Forever.
Really?
Yes, because A, there was a doorway you have to travel through.
Okay,
And
sure.
B, he asks you, what is it that you want? And then he sort of provides a way to get it. And the other thing, the bigger thing, is the newspaper he's reading is the same newspaper Spock pulls up, the Star Dispatch, that tells him that Edith Keeler must die.
Oh, okay. All right.
So those are my evidence for the Guardian of Forever, because I first told that. I'm like, that's just silly. It's just a doorway. Like, because in fantasy writing, doorways are like the opening act of any sort of like story. Like, Bilbo's going to get out that door, and it doesn't matter how Bilbo gets out that door, as long as he's out the door to do his thing.
Yeah.
Well, someone I was reading through a load of stuff online, and someone said that the Edith Keeler episode could well be the start of the Mirror Universe. So the idea that this also reflects that is a damn good nod to say, well, this is where it branched off from the Prime Universe. So we don't know.
So the newspaper is the same newspaper from Guardian of Forever.
Well, it's not the same newspaper, but it's the same. Like, it's like a Daily Bugle. Like, the Star Dispatch is the fictional newspaper they used in Guardian of Forever.
Again, these people do not pick these at random. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we know about the people that made the Guardian of Forever?
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Yeah.
Rather than being an embodiment of the Guardian, what if he's one of them?
He could be.
We don't know. So at the in between episodes, you made an observation that what you were one of the things that you speculated about was that we were going to get the Georgiou series was going to be like a morally ambiguous quantum leap.
Yes.
Yes. And I wanted that. Like, I want that so bad, and I want Carl to be Georgiou's Al.
Yeah, and it can still happen. It would work. Yeah, that's
Where
right.
she goes from like one alternate reality or through time to another every week, like fixing things. And Carl is there, like, giving her tips and being her guy in the van.
It'd be cool because it would be nice to see. I mean, again, you don't introduce these kind of characters. You hope, and they turn up for one episode and they disappear. Especially someone that just turns up with a magic door that can send you through time. You go, well, yeah, that was fine. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Look, we have these temporal accords in the Star Trek setting now, right? We're like, okay, temporal accords, time travel is off limits. Okay, that's not going to stop people. Like, you can get in a starship, rocket yourself around the sun, and go through time. Having a law that says don't do that does not make people not do it, right? Someone's still got to be patrolling the timeline. Someone's still got to be watching that shit. I'm still hoping that whatever force Carl represents is a representation of that self-appointed temporal interdimensional observer corps, and they need agents. They need field agents.
That'd be cool. again, we are seeing a lot of nods to time travel, and if time travel is not the solution to the burn, the idea it's set up for another series is perfectly sensible.
We have a question from one of our observers. Carrie's here. Hey, Carrie. Do we know if Carl is in the new show? Has any casting been announced?
I don't think we know anything about the new show apart from it's a potential Section 31 one. Yeah.
The only things that were announced was that there was a new Star Trek show featuring Michelle Yeoh. It would be a Michelle Yeoh vehicle, and then it would be set sometime after season 3 of Discovery.
And we know the writers because you.
Yes, and the show writers will announce pretty soon thereafter. Because when it was announced, Michelle Yeoh's character was involved in Section 31. I think it was conjectural that it would be a Section 31 show. But the showrunners themselves, I do not believe have been quoted as saying it's a Section 31 TV show.
Well, once we went 1,000 years into the future, the Section 31 connection just frankly doesn't make a lot of sense anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been trying to do that with Cronenberg's character, try and tie it back to Section 31 every time. But this obviously isn't how it's going to work. But I think you're right. I think it was... There will be a Michelle Yeoh thing. This is what's going to go on. So, yeah. The interesting thing about Cronenberg's character, apparently he has been announced he's going to be in season 4 of Discovery.
Really?
So, yes. So, that character, if Michelle Yeoh is going to disappear at the end of this series to do her own thing, and Cronenberg's character stays behind, that also shatters that link between those two possibly being in the same series. So,
unless season 4 is the retcon of season 3.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yes.
About that. But
it's the redo episode where we go through all the same stuff, but it's not much nicer.
You guys just said 10 minutes ago that we can't retcon the mirror universe stuff of season 1 because that would be too much. And now you're saying that it would be okay.
Okay, Jason, let me give you context. The reason why it would be too much would be because that's the very beginning of the series. This would just be a reboot of season 3 that was a sequel compendium tie-in to season 3. Like, we're not rebooting the whole TV show. We're not rebooting the whole timeline, because presumably Discovery still has to vanish from the timeline in order for them to appeal and solve the Klingon plot thread.
Don't make
There's so many bigger plots tied to season 1 that you just can't get away with Stamets. But with us being so far into the future, it doesn't matter what the hell we do, because guys, are tied into it.
They are not going to retcon an entire season of this show. All right, I'm going to make you eat that hat. I'm
not going to eat my hat.
I'm going to make you eat your hat. But anyway, I want to get back to that scene when Georgiou, because you brought this up already, Abe. When Georgiou says goodbye to the main cast, it feels very permanent.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm leaving the show, and she's saying goodbye to the audience as well as to the main cast. Thoughts on that whole scene and that conversation, Jim?
Oh, I love the fact that she just turns to Tilly and goes, "Oh, it's Captain Saru's false command mistake," and then actually accepts a hug from her. Like, see, that's so you got your biting wet, you got your, like, my defense mechanisms are up. I'm wearing this stupid, Go Fit device to see if I wink out of existence.
Yeah.
But, I'm cruising at yellow alert, but I'm going to lower my shields long enough for Tilly to get a hug.
Yeah.
And for the camera to hold on it, and the episode to just take just to breathe and just let it set. Like, I really appreciated that.
Abe?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it almost is that kind of, okay, this is the last time you're seeing each other.
Yeah. Because
I think if it was just another mission, they would just disappear together and pop down there, and then they come back and hey, everything's right, and now I'm off. But the idea is kind of whether she's coming back from the universe, whether she's going to refuse to just rejoin Discovery afterwards, who knows? But I think this might be it. Yeah.
Georgiou's role in the show has always been really weird in season 3. Like, she's never really had a place to fit in. They've used her as, like, the kick-ass character, like the character that comes in and rescues everybody with martial arts when the crew needs help. But thematically, she's kind of an outsider, and she doesn't fit in with the Federation of the Future or Discovery of the Future. This is, to me, I felt like this is clearly going to be the Georgiou redemption story arc. We've dwelled often in this show about the many sins Georgiou has committed in her past. I mean, she eats Kelpians for breakfast, right? She's an evil person, but her comments in the mirror universe and her reactions to Tilly and others, I think, are designed to show us that the Prime universe has rubbed off on her, that she has stared into the abyss, and the abyss has stared back into her, and so by living in this universe for a while, yes, she's changed them, but they've also changed her, and now in this new story, she's forced to act on those changes and ultimately to acknowledge that she's not the same person that she was. And she'll never pay the ultimate price for all the terrible things she's done because it's a television show. But she will try to be good. She will go from lawful evil to chaotic good, right? I don't know. It's my thought.
See, sorry, I knew you were just about to speak there. One interesting thing I found about this is if you look at the costumes that they go down to the planet with, the black, Georgiou has not got a communicator badge on the outside of her coat, which I find odd for a Section 31 character because she is actually a member of Section 31. Right. So I don't know if that's been a thing that she hasn't had a badge all the way through. I just thought it was odd that they. She's technically part of the crew, but she hasn't got a badge. I just thought that was a weird thing as well. But her mirror universe encounters, she's several percent less snarky in the mirror universe than she is in the Prime universe. It's really weird. It's like you're less snappy, you're less. So it's like okay, it's almost like the mellow Georgiou, but you can still do your thing and grimace at people and give them withering looks, but maybe it's beneath the Emperor status she's got in the mirror universe.
That's it exactly. It's her role. Like because she's the outsider is why she's so snarky. But now she's the Empress and everybody's looking at her all the time, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Those so I've sort of reconciled the fact that like a few episodes ago I said like Georgiou is the Trump photo in your family.
Right.
Like you don't get to just wash that away. We still have to live with these people and how you navigate that space. And that was because the show is Michael Burnham's show. Yeah. And Michael Burnham is very much written as surrogate daughter to Philippa Georgiou.
Right. That's right.
And the conflict there has always been, you look exactly like the woman I knew who raised me into Starfleet, into this life of Starfleet and service, but you're like fundamentally evil. Oh, you're like, so there's that dichotomy that Burnham's been wrestling with.
For sure.
And the thing that I've always been afraid with the Georgiou show is that they would wash their hands clean of what we've seen.
Yeah.
So one of my critiques of season one's discovery is we have this interesting situation where Loka is from the mirror universe, living in the Prime universe, and he's having to navigate these waters.
Yeah.
And the thing I thought would be interesting is what if he became like this weird anti-hero? Yeah. But in order for them to get Philippa onto the show full time, he becomes a cartoon villain.
Yep.
And she becomes this sort of like, I'm going to have this moment of compassion that leads to me being saved, and then we're just not going to reference or we'll opaquely reference your past sins. Yeah. And that's really season 2 Philippa and my issue. Now the show has just given her Loka's plot thread. The whole thread of season 1 of how long can I stay pretending to be a thing before I become that thing is Philippa, and now she's having to reconcile that. And because we're actually turning that into the plot of 2 episodes, I think it's to the show's betterment.
Yeah.
If this was the plan to get Philippa here, I don't mind her showing up in a cowboy ball and getting beat up and making weird innuendo comments, because this episode of Discovery was so solid and it doesn't rely on references to Spock. References to Spock to get me to like Star Trek, easy. That's low-hanging fruit.
right.
Doing your own thing to get me invested in Star Trek, that's very Star Trek thing to do. I'm on board for that.
Can you imagine the writer's room fight about giving this a two-parter?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so contrary to Discovery's tempo to do this as a two-parter. There's so many. It's a one-episode thing, right? But they gave it the room that it needed, and I like that.
Well, the last Mirror Universe episode was a two-part as well. So that
was it. I thought it was one. Wasn't it like four? I thought.
Or technically 3 parts, wasn't it?
Four. Yeah. It was four. It was the whole half of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget those that weird 31-minute episode that's like a blink, like it's a cup of coffee, and you're like,
what it is, yeah. So the cool thing is we've seen a lot of Georgiou's reaction to Prime Burnham as a thing, and like I said before, oh god, here we go. You're talking to Book about, oh, have you kissed her yet? Oh, for God's sake, grow up. But now we're actually seeing the reaction, the to and fro between them. And we didn't get that. We only got what Georgiou implied was their relationship. Now we're actually seeing something actually in physically, and I think that's pretty cool.
This is one of the things I was mentioning earlier. Like when Georgiou says to Burnham, "Look, you're just like the Burnham from my universe. All you want to do is control people." But that Burnham was honest about it, and you pretend you're not. And that felt to me, or when she says to Burnham, "Will you just please learn when to shut up?" Like that, I swear to God, that's the writer trying to make an observation about the show that they're a guest writing for.
But this is why I thought this episode was so good, because we did get Burnham scenes. We did get a lot of stuff in it, and it was in it. Say the plots of against the Emperor was a Burnham thing. Everything was not Burnham. It was like, oh my god, it says over in the universe, right, I've got to run to find Burnham. And there was actually stuff going on that, it wasn't the focus. I half expected her not to show up, because I thought, well, they're going to give us some breathing room and actually do some stuff on Discovery and not actually have, but it's cool. So,
and it still allows the act, because I love the actress.
Yeah.
It allows her to play her male universe. Like she's almost the Joker in that scene, in the hallway where she gets thrown to the ground, and she's like, basically shouting "hit me" to Batman.
Yeah,
the scene was great.
Let's talk about Mirror Burnham for a minute. I decided that men in the evil men have the goatee, although we don't actually see anybody with a goatee in the Mirror universe anymore, right? Other than Spock, but the women all get like really heavy eye makeup. That's how you know they're evil, right? But I actually thought the actress for Burnham, I get her name. I'm terrible at pronouncing her name, so I need to learn that better. But Martin Green is, I think, her last name.
Mm-hmm.
That Martin Green did a wonderful job selling that character's point of view. When Georgiou asked her, like, "Why do you hate me so much? Like, what did I do to you?" And it's like, you made me, everything I am is depending on you. I don't have a personal existence, and that's why I'm with Lorca, because he loves me for who I am, and she sells it. I felt sympathy for evil, twisted Joker Burnham in that moment, and it was effective. And you can just see Georgiou's position, because she's in this terrible no-win situation of her own making. All Burnham wants is to be left alone to do her own thing. And if Georgiou gives her that, then all Burnham will do is kill her. Right? And it's like, okay, if I give you the thing you want, if I give you the thing that you should have, it will mean my own death. And if you love somebody, you got to set them free. And it's a great moral conundrum. I love the way this show is going.
Can we talk about the background characters?
Yeah, for sure.
I would touch on that as well. So yeah.
Okay, so the Mirror Universe gives us Arium from season 2. It's not the original Arium who's playing Lieutenant Nelson, but the woman who's sitting next to, I think it's next to Owo in the cafeteria scene. That's the actress from season 2's Arium, who hasn't been cyberfied. Like she hasn't been told into because that accident never happened. So she's not in any makeup. She's just herself in this military uniform. We got Landrew Vuitton, the security officer.
Yeah.
He's back. We finally see Meryl Coble, who's got this really awesome sort of like red. Like I love that the physician uniform in this universe is just red, so you can't see the blood.
You see the blood, exactly.
Yeah, once he shows up in the red and the gold, I'm like, that is some good design work right there.
Yeah.
So you've got all these sort of like background stories happening that it's just like it's literally what it is. It's just in the background. Like they don't focus on it. Like I had to look it up that was the same actor because her hair's colored slightly different from the flashback. Like it's not as bright blonde as it was. It was more of a, I don't want to say dishwater blonde, but it was a darker blonde.
Yeah.
And so I had to actually look it up and be, they actually brought her back in to do just this guest cameo for like an episode or two.
Yeah.
Really small booking. And just acknowledging the show's continuity via the Mirror Universe, I thought was really well done.
Hey?
Yeah, it was cool. Again, I also like that we got to see the background characters that haven't done anything in the Prime universe do something. We got a bit of obviously Detmer flying ships last time. We got a fight with the security officer, and it's quite nice for him to see that. Okay, this is what you're going to do today. You're not going to be standing over there. You're going to be punching somebody. Hey, which is really cool.
Owo's duel was so much a flashback to the original series Mirror Universe episode, right? Where Sulu tries to take command. Is it Sulu?
Well, when Tilly shows up, that sort of felt like Chekhov's heel tone.
Yeah.
Because he kind of walks into the side, and those are the two guys already waiting.
Yeah.
And the combat sequence did feel like the Sulu sequence when he shows up with his men in the sickbay.
Yeah.
It was cool, and we saw a lot of the crew doing stuff. Mirror Universe stuff that isn't just like they're plotting backstab. We see, they're socializing by executing each other, but they are socializing, But I just thought it was really cool. I even looked at like some of the characters to see who were playing, especially for Arium, to see if it was correct that the other actress was back. And I completely blanked her name. The guy who is on the bridge, who I think is the comms officer, and I've completely blanked what his name is.
That would be Bryce.
I think. Who's the other guy on there that we see?
Bryce, and then the guy in the fight is Reese.
Okay, because there was like the listings for the characters and what they played and what they're credited for at the end of episodes, and the one guy was like, "Okay, you're the shuttle pilot, your second's comms officer," and it isn't like till like, you get a surname and the first name. It's like, oh my god, thank God for that. It's nice that you've kind of seen these characters grow out a little bit at a time. Now you actually know who they are, and now we have a Mirror Universe idea of who they are in that respect. So it's nice to see. It's just nice to get them to do something.
Often when we saw the Mirror Universe in DS9, it was played almost as camp. Like they were so mustache twirling evil and deviants. But this episode felt more like the original series Mirror Universe, where you actually saw them living their lives, right? Like, Kirk goes back to his stateroom and there's somebody there. And like, you get this sense like they have a life outside of the caricature of the Mirror Universe. And I love that. Like you mentioned that bit in the rec room where they're like throwing knives at each other and all kinds of, they're partying. And you get the sense that the Mirror Universe actually has like a life there. And you could maybe, again, it's the gamer in me, but like, okay, I could run a game in that setting.
Yeah.
Right? Like it feels like you can immerse yourself in it. There's enough there that I can bite my teeth into and I can imagine that whole universe. It's nice.
It's like classic Mirror Universe and Enterprise Mirror Universe. We definitely got the idea. You kind of like you aligned yourself with the next person who might be captain if they can take Kirk out or whatever.
Yeah.
And all these sideways glances between all the crew members. You go,
Yeah.
okay, which one knows about this? Because like, okay, Stamets is dead. Do they know Stamets is dead? Because Tilly seems a bit suspect. And then you've got Colbert. He must have known. Come on. So it's like, this is really interesting to see exactly how that plays out.
And then at the end, when Georgiou doesn't kill Burnham, all of her 6 second, like the body, oh whoa, and everybody, they're all like looking at each other like, holy shit, we didn't kill her.
Yeah.
Like the Empress has gone weak, Empress has gone soft. What are we gonna do? And they have to do it all with side glance, like sideways looks. It's great.
She does put her in the agonizer though, so that's something.
If Captain Killy is not killed next episode, I'm going to be a little disappointed.
You don't.
See, here's the thing. They've already killed off Captain Killy. Like, they've arbitrarily killed off all these characters with that one line of dialogue when they get back from the Mirror Universe saying that Discovery was destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they thought the ship was lost, because they found the wreckage of a Discovery that had a slight wheeled quantum variance that they ruled to be a result of the spore drive.
Yeah.
But if we can get an actual, like, awesome Captain Killy death sequence, like if she stages this coup and it takes Burnham and Georgiou to take her out, sign me up for that.
You're breaking my heart, Jim.
Okay, so
we're not going to get a Captain Killy TV show. Like, if we're going to use it.
Let's say if that Discovery source book comes out, that's what you can set your next campaign in. So you'll be all right.
Yeah,
I've got a question as well. Now, obviously, we mentioned in the actual episode we've got Lorca. Okay, Lorca is the thing that's plotting. Now, what ship is he captain of in the Mirror Universe? Because I assumed it was Discovery, but
he's captain of the Borean.
Right, thank you. Because it's like, when they first got on there, I thought, okay, what ship is this? Is this the Shinzo or is this the Discovery? And then there's the Discovery, and I think, okay, obviously Lorca's going to step out the shadows in a minute. He didn't show up. It's like, so where is he? So I was getting very confused with exactly where everyone's placement was along this thing. But yeah, just want to clarify that.
All right, so I want to the one last thing in the Mirror Universe I want to look at before we wrap up is Saru, who's a slave on the ship, serving everybody drinks, and I really saw Georgiou's shock when she sees Saru, and contrasting that with the captain that she saw in the Prime Universe. And that seems like a moment where Rogelio really helps us to understand that Georgiou is forced to kind of start asking questions about herself and her own behavior and about the universe she's in. I feel like she came to respect Saru. She may not have ever admitted it because she's got to be snarky, but she's come to respect Saru. And now when she sees Saru as a slave, she knows that's not right. And this brings her home, and she's got to start asking. Well, anyway,
I think I see what you're saying, Jason, and I love it. And if the show was better, it would have owned that moment. But because Saru is constantly being portrayed as not Burnham, he's not right. The choices he makes, even in this episode, he has a captain decision to make at the very beginning, and he's like, we can't risk the entire fleet safety on one call set. And the admiral, in private, now gratefully it's not in front of people, but in private, he's like, the crew's never going to be able to look at you again if you allow one of your crew members to die without putting up a fight.
Right. And I want to note that last week, you guys speculated that the Admiral and the Federation would become the bad guys for next season.
Oh, I still think that is. I still think that's
I gotta say, Admiral Vance I'm starting to turn into an Admiral Vance stan here. Like he's doing a great job of making himself seem very compassionate and sympathetic. And if they decide to make the Federation into the bad guys, they're going to have to earn that because that's quite a heel turn.
They're showing him sympathetic to other Federation or Starfleet members,
right?
So again, what a better way of having someone be, oh my god, he's the ultimate villain, by having them be portrayed as good all the way through the season.
Yeah, so the devil's always handsome.
Yeah.
But Vance was great. He's like so sympathetic. Like, hey, I fucked up when I was young. Like, I get it, but him overriding Saru and then giving him like an educational, teachable moment. That I kind of like.
When that was playing out, the only thing I'm thinking is, why don't you want your most powerful weapon in your fleet? What are you hiding, Vance? What are you hiding?
Yeah. I hear you. Anyway, can you walk us through again how Saru lost the fear ganglia, and how did that happen? And does Georgiou know about it? And can she help Saru in this?
So to condense season 2, essentially what happened was they encountered the sphere, which was this ancient creature that was dying, and it wanted to die, but before it died, it wanted to pass on its knowledge. And because it was so near death, and Saru is so empathetic as a creature, it started entering. Saru started entering his death throes.
Yeah,
like biological, like Vahai is what they mentioned.
Yeah,
and he survived it. So
right.
He came out on the other side, and he's the first Kelpian to do that in centuries. And then they go back to their home planet, and they essentially do that with the tractor beam, sort of laser beam the whole planet, and everyone goes through their death throes in the night, and then wake up on the other side, and they're all like, beefier, I guess.
They're all fearless.
Yeah.
They're all fearless now.
And I always, like, when that happened, like, even rewatching the season, when that happens, I'm like, first off, there was so many Prime Directive violations here.
Yeah.
Secondly, what happens when the oppressor becomes fearless? Like, when the oppressed becomes, like, I've always thought, like, Kelpians are going to wind up being the bad guy at some point in the Star Trek universe, because they've been kicked around and culled and eaten for 100 years, and all of a sudden, they don't have fear, and not only do they not have fear, but they have like built-in weaponry. So that's always kind of been my thought. Can we talk about the Kelpian in that?
Well, yeah. Also, was that alluded to in the Mirror Universe stuff with the Kelpians, that they knew that was going to happen? So that's why they culled them at a certain point in their life cycle, so they could evolve to be fearless.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
We get one scene where we find that Federation starship. We speculated that it might be the Discovery from the Calypso timeline. We threw around a bunch of other ideas, but ultimately it turns out that we're building connection. We're making the audience care about that starship by making it full of Kelpians, which was an interesting move. Jim, thoughts on that episode, on that scene?
I didn't like the costume. And so the costume is the exact same costume that his sister wore when she was like Speaker of the Planet. So
which is precisely what I thought it was. I thought, oh my God, they're not going to do that, are they? Yeah.
It's the same costume and more 1,000 years removed. Like you can keep a costume and like change it a little bit. Give me a little bit of visual imagery.
Why isn't she in a Starfleet uniform?
Why isn't she in a Starfleet uniform? Why does she have to look exactly like his sister did to get Saru to Kale? Like, the fact that Kelpians are in space, like, that is alone, like, huge. But now the Kelpian looks like to be the speaker of the race, like the most, like, essentially the Pope.
Yeah.
You know how she was played, that character was played. And, like, you can look at Pope costumes through artwork and slightly modify them, just a little bit without changing its popiness.
It's popiness. That's funny.
So how long ago did they say the signal was sent? Because they gave a rough estimation, didn't they? Because did they say, this signal's from X 100 years ago or
yeah.
Now, I think we're going to see some kind of time dilation effect where for the ship in the thing, nothing's changed. It's been 24 hours. Whereas so again, we're not going back to Saru's time, but we are still seeing. We're gonna meet that character again. The idea that we're gonna go there, it's not that person, is gonna be ridiculous.
Are we gonna save her? We're gonna save her life?
We shall see.
Yeah, I think Aid's right. I think it's going to be a Kelsey Grammer shows up on the bridge of the Bozeman. Is like, can I help you? Obviously, like, I think it's going to be a situation where, because the costume is the Pope costume. Now, they haven't said that she plays the same role in Kelpian society, but the visual cue that we get is it's the same uniform used by his sister. Right. And therefore is, if not a direct relation to him, distantly removed over 930 years, then at least has a prominent place in their society, that she's captain of a starship.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we hit a lot of the big elements of this episode. Is there more that we have not touched on, guys? Abe, you surely have a long list of technical errors that we.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah,
I do.
You had so much fun.
Yeah, I honestly can't think of too many things. I honestly, because it was so character driven.
Yes.
And I mean, there's the weird thing about like when they got when they landed, they discovered what the planet was to like beam them down to. Instead of just literally beam them to Carl's location, they decided to beam them somewhere so they could wander around for an hour and a half before they actually got there. I mean, there's that thing. But apart from that, I mean, and again, which direction where did they know which way to go? If they knew which way to go, why didn't they just put them there in the first place? But that's pretty much it. I mean, it's pretty damn good. I mean, they've done some good stuff.
My wife called one thing. We were watching it, and when Adira comments, when they get the signal, and it's that teaser of, "Oh, you gotta get Saru," and my wife's like, "Just hit your comm badge. You can beam right there."
That's true.
You don't have to cut. You don't have to cut that scene anymore. You can just do it as a continuation. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good dramatical point. That's a good drama point that you bring up. That this new technology deprives you of the right stuff running down the hallway scene.
Right.
Because now you can be anywhere on your ship, and the get the captain this information thing takes out the urgency of that sequence.
Also, with that little bit of the Adira scene, I'm not particularly happy with the relationship between Stamets and Adira, because I think the idea that she just treats them as a child all the while when they're inhabiting 900 years worth of knowledge, that kind of knocks me off a little bit, because they know what they're doing. Yeah, the idea we constantly, I mean, obviously for Stamets himself, he probably sees them as that, and that's why that's how he reacts. But weird thing about that was as well is the whole mentioning of Grey, and that's why she's up to see. I did it again. That's why they're upset, because Grey's not appeared in the. It's like, yeah, but we didn't even know if that was a thing that was supposed to happen. So it's like you some people will be like, thank God I haven't got the voices anymore. So it's a kind of almost like that scene was there to remind us that is still a thing happening, but yet to expand upon it. So. We've still got that tiny little bit of breadcrumbing through the episode, but again, they didn't spend 15 minutes on it and just take us away from the other storyline, which I think was very, very good. It's just enough there to remind us this is a thing that's going to pop up at some point in time, and it's going to become relevant.
Yeah, Jim.
Well, first off, thank you. There was a point I wanted to bring up, and I totally escaped me because I was again having so much fun talking this episode, and it's a nice, I've said for the last several weeks, when Discovery is character, I'm invested. Like, I love these characters. I want to see them be challenged and interact and solve those challenges. Yeah. But when it's about plots and mysteries and how can we save the universe, I'm just nodding off, like you said. Now, this brings up a good conversation about paratext. And they say this because Star Trek Discovery is engaging in paratext on Instagram. Crewmen are given their own personal logs every week on Mondays, and they'll like 3-minute little burst of information, but it's character information. And this week's little bout was with Stamets talking about his dad.
Oh, right.
And the fact that, like, I understand why it's not being incorporated in this episode, because this is not Stamets' episode.
Right.
Narratively, it would be wasted. But there were really interesting pieces of character dialogue. The actors are bringing their A game to it. Like, yes, they're recording lines in a booth, but they're not just phoning it in. Forgive the pun. And the writing's really specific, like really on point. Like, Linus pining for Georgiou for the movie date is funny, but also touching.
Yeah.
And I think with Discovery, more than any other Star Trek show, so we've always had like multimedia things. This show opened up talking about books,
yep.
Star Trek novels. I think with Discovery, they're really using the multimedia framework, I think to its detriment, because they're not advertising it on the show.
I was just about to say that I had no idea that existed. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know that because they're not telling you on the show, hey, go to Instagram/Star Trek logs or whatever it's called to hear, Jet Reno complain about the holodecks. Like, did you know the holodecks were on Discovery? They are. Or to hear like Owo talking about her loss of connection and how she's not grounded herself and she's just sort of floating through her day job. Like, these are really interesting pieces of captain's logs or personal logs that is not in the show because A, the show is not about characters, it's about plot mostly, and B, we're not advertising it. Like, we're not telling people, hey, go over here for this, or hey, go over here to read this novel. And I think that's to the show's detriment because they are leaning into the continuity.
This reminds me of the Watchmen stuff. Like the HBO's Watchmen had a weekly online data file. I can't remember the name of something. The Peteypedia, where a character on the show, the FBI agent Petey, was collecting all of these data files that illuminated various aspects of the Watchmen universe and also explained what happened to some of the characters that we never saw, like Dan, like Night Owl. And all of that stuff. In Watchmen, it felt appropriate because, of course, the Watchmen comic had large text sections in the back. So it felt like, okay, this is their updated version of the Under the Hood bio from the original Night Owl or whatever. But they never told you about that either. Like, only you had to be a hardcore fan and go looking for it, basically, to find it. And I think that, I'm no marketing expert, but I think that that's what the marketing people are thinking. They're like intentionally not advertising it. And they want to let the Star Trek fan community, which we have to acknowledge is famous, right? Like, Star Trek fans are
Infamous.
And we're gonna make this Instagram account with all the actors giving their A game for these little 3-minute logs, and we're gonna sort of Easter egg it, and we're gonna let the fans find out about it and spread that word organically and make it part of the experience of, like, hey, did you hear about this? And make the whispering campaign part of the show.
The irony being as well, though, is that you could do those sections pre-credits every episode.
Yeah, you could.
You could have a different character every episode, and you go, okay, who are we going to find out? And you'd actually give a crap about the characters. If you start, it didn't have to tie into the story. We've had a couple of Culber personal logs over audios over the actual beginning of episodes while we wander around. So the idea we do that, and like the OWO stuff, I didn't know anything about that, and yeah. It would just be nice to
narratively, though, okay, no showrunner is going to let you do that. If you open the show with a 3-minute personal dialogue by Linus about his love experience, about his pining for Georgiou, the audience now expects a Linus episode in the next hour.
But this is the irony being as well, because I'm watching it on Netflix, I don't get any breaks. So I don't get the American style thing where they do the teaser thing. You get a break, and then you get the rest of the show. Yeah. So you could, but I don't know. It would have been cool to, even if it's just audio logs. I don't know, but again, like you say, it's a real shame that those character moments are being lost on people.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to this point, like. Yeah. Stamets has no father figure. Like, he was desperate for his father's attention, and that's been established in the show when he's recording the log to his brother before they jump into the future. But it's being reinforced by the fact that, like, it's a sad scene where this kid is sitting at the top of the stairs counting the number of fireballs on this piece of carpet, waiting for their dad's approval because he got a good report card. And like, sort of being there and acknowledging the fact that, yes, Adira is this 930-year-old, however, being, but they are still essentially a kid at this point of their development.
Yeah.
And sort of like how Stamets is reconciling these two thoughts. Like, to your point, Aid, it was beautifully written in this little, Instagram post, but I only had to sign up for Instagram so I could just listen to these little podcasts, these little 3-minute interludes. Because again, character is why I'm here for Discovery.
Yeah.
So any character I get, I'm desperate for.
But we've also seen already that we've had the discussion about Adira between Culber and Stamets in their quarters.
Yeah.
So come on, use some of these ideas that you've got. Yeah, put it in there, because again, you saying that as a motivation for why he acts that way makes it a lot more sensible. Gives me a good reason why he's doing it. So the idea that we're just going, okay, well, Burke, the person who's looking at me, go, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm okay. I'll get on with it. I'm fine. So it's nice to see. Well, that is the reason for doing so. And again, maybe it's one of those breadcrumbs that's going to come to fruition later on, and we're going to see something actually said in the show about that thing. But yeah,
was the other engineer? Was her name Jet?
Yeah, Jet Reno.
Jet Reno. That's Reno. I've been thinking about Adira as a replacement for Reno in the dynamics of the show, especially in the engineering room with Stamets. When we last saw Reno, it resulted in Stamets almost killing himself climbing through a Jeffries tube. And I think that, but Adira is very good for Stamets. And I think that the show is evolving, is swapping out those characters from a dysfunctional. I think the reason why we saw Stamets almost die in the Jeffries tube is to show us that his relationship with Reno was bad for him. That Reno was constantly egging him on and being snarky, and it got Stamets. It brought out all the worst parts of Stamets. But now he's got someone that he can be a mentor figure to. And yes, Adira is 1,000 years old, but Adira has this weird, like, 2-part identity, right? They are simultaneously 1,000 years old and also a 16-year-old kid. And so that means that the most important parts of both get emphasized. They are the most 16-year-old kid you've ever seen, and they are also the wisest 930-year-old character you've ever seen, right? They have to be both. Mm-hmm. And so Stamets gets to be kind of this adopted father. They did a poster of the Discovery crew, and in the poster for season 3, and in the poster, Adira is between Stamets and Culber. Like, it's this sort of new little nuclear family that they're building there. And Jim, you've commented on it as a kind of adoption.
They've like, Culber has the line to Georgiou, like, if I had time, I would have kids.
Yeah.
So that's something Culber is interested in.
Yeah.
And the one person in that equation that would be standoffish towards that is Stamets. Like, Stamets has difficulty relating to his significant other, let alone relating to a child.
Yeah.
And now, through through Stamets' own narcissism, because he's relating so much of his own experiences to Adira, he's allowing himself to grow and to put himself and make himself emotionally vulnerable. I think that's very interesting.
I also think that because we've got the not necessarily constant, but the frequently referenced dynamic between Burnham and Georgiou as a mother-daughter relationship. Somewhat.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't want to put another one in there, but if Georgiou's going, the idea we've replaced that with this as a this is the new family on Voyager. Oh, Voyager, see, there you go, on Discovery. I think works well. I think it'd be quite cool. But I think if we move from one dynamic to another dynamic, and it's a different one, but it'll be interesting. Yeah.
Well, come back next week. We're gonna be here for the next episode of Terra Firma. I'm excited. I'm eager to watch the show.
Now, can they stick the landing? This is the question. This is the classic Doctor Who cliffhanger episode where the second episode. Oh my God, what did you do that for? So, yeah.
Also, the season is longer than I thought. It's 13 episodes rather than 12. And that's got to be because of Terra Firma. Like, if it would have been a 12-episode season if Terra Firma had been one episode.
But
the writers must have insisted on 2. and that stretched the calendar out a little bit.
Well, to the point, like Enterprise is good in season 4 because they have these 2-part episodes. They have got these 2 to 3-part episodes.
Yeah.
Well, they can save money. Like that's what the whole reason. Like it wasn't a narrative concern; it was a budgetary concern.
Oh.
Like we have to build sets for one episode. Why don't we just reuse those sets for the next 2 episodes and save some dough? That's why we get the Vulcan trilogy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I kind of think that's the same thing here on Discovery. Maybe they're not trying to save budget, but narratively speaking, I'm more invested, I'm more interested because we've been allowed to have moments where Billy gives Georgiou a hug.
Yeah.
Things can breathe in this episode.
Well, we'll be back to see if the mystery of Carl is maybe it's Carl with a Q. Or maybe the Guardian of Forever connection will be explained.
Or he's a traveler. Or he's a prophet from the Celestial Temple. Like there's so many things.
Related, or yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, I think Guardian Forever is the winner at the moment. Yeah.
Peace out, everybody. Live long and prosper.